Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Dirk Lisse, and I'm the Director of Sustainable Tourism Development here at UNWTO. I welcome you to this first technical session on the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action in Tourism. At the heart of the declaration is collaboration, and we wanted as early as possible provide this opportunity to engage and learn more about how far we got, focusing today especially on climate action plans and measurement. I thank you all, the signatories of the Glasgow Declaration, for being with us here today and leading the tourism sector's commitment. I now pass you on into the good hands of my colleague, Virginia Fernandez-Trappa. Virginia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dirk. Hello, everyone. I'm Virginia Fernandez-Trappa, Program Officer at the Sustainable Development of Tourism Department at UNWTO. I'm very excited to be delivering this first technical session of the Glasgow Declaration together with the rest of colleagues in the coordination team. So Jeremy, Roxana, and Ben, who are also here this morning. I'd like to thank you all so much for connecting. It means a lot for us. Thanks for your commitment and interest. And before we start, I'd like to recap the agenda that we have for today and a few housekeeping rules. Basically, for a smooth and fruitful session, we would like you to stay muted, please, and with your cameras off. And if possible, since we are numerous, try to adjust your name on Zoom using the right click of the mouse to show your organization and then your name so that we can all know who's here. There will be a question and answers session at the end of today's program where you would be able to post questions through the chat, and the session is being recorded. Let's get on with the agenda. So today's main objective, if we have to summarize in one sentence or bullet point, is to kickstart the implementation of the Glasgow Declaration and basically introduce to you the supporting mechanisms that we are building around the declaration to guide and accompany stakeholders in the delivery of their commitments. The meeting will last 1 hour, and we already heard the welcome remarks. We will now be sharing an overview of progress and priorities, followed by more details on the implementation plans and collaboration mechanisms. And then we will have a brief discussion with some of the signatories to get their insights on a few technical aspects, and the Q&A at the end. So as you all know, we launched the declaration at COP26. The launch took place on the 4th of November. It was a successful event organized by UNWTO and hosted by UNFCCC, the UN Agency for Climate Change. The event was covered by over 400 news articles and reached with a combined reach of 560 million. And at the launch, we already counted 300 signatories, the so-called launch partners. Since then, organizations have continued joining, and momentum has continued to build. What was the process which led us to COP? Just to put everyone into context briefly. We started the drafting back in March 2021. In the drafting committee, we had collaboration with the colleagues in the United Nations Environment Programme. There was also Visit Scotland, Travel Foundation, Tourism Declares, and UNWTO. Then we followed a participatory approach to develop the text of the declaration, involving consultations with stakeholders. And after the launch in November, we closed the year by formalizing an alliance with the Travel Foundation and Tourism Declares to ensure the implementation of the Glasgow Declaration in the years to come. The status as of today, 17th of January, in terms of signatories that have signed, is 482 signatories. I mean, today, 17th of January, a week ago. Basically, signatories are split in 3 types. So we have business signatories, we have destination signatories, and supporting organization signatories. You can see how that splits on the pie. And of course, the most numerous group is the business group. So far, on the bar chart on the right, you can visualize subtypes of signatories. It's interesting to, for example, point out the number of tour operators that have committed. It's a total of 122 tour operators, which is basically 25% of the signatories as of now. There are also accommodation providers, for example, 9% of the whole of signatories. We also have NGOs as a numerous group that would be 14% of the total signatories. And we also have some DMOs and DMCs, 5% and 6% of the overall group of signatories. On this slide, we can see a few logos that we have highlighted to give you an idea of some of the organizations, but of course, it's very difficult to feature 482 logos on a slide. So we are building a signatories page. As you know, this page now looks like a list, but is being upgraded, and it will soon feature the logos of all signatories, as well as the commitment pitch that you were sharing with us when you were submitting your commitment. We will be alerting you when this is done. And as today, I know that we have also some organizations connected that are not yet signatories. We wanted to take a little moment to recap what are the commitments that the signatories are actually committing to when signing up to Glasgow Declaration. And it is mainly 5 things. So the first one is to support the global commitment to halve emissions by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050 at the latest. Then we're asking to deliver climate action plans within 12 months or updating existing plans within 12 months from becoming a signatory and obviously implementing those plans. It is suggested that the plans align with 5 pathways, and we are setting up a reporting mechanism so that signatories can report progress on an annual basis. And the last one is requesting everyone to work on a collaborative spirit. These slides, there are 3 slides now with graphs that I will run through very, very quickly, which are there basically in the slide deck so that you can check more in detail later. This is the research which somehow supports the commitments of the declaration. In parallel, while we were formulating the declaration, we also carried out a global survey. And the results of the global survey basically provided us the evidence that is supporting the commitment. So we had pre-existing assumptions that planning was, climate action planning, relatively weak in our sector. We also had assumption that measurement was only done by a minority and that disclosure was needing to be addressed. With the survey, we managed to basically confirm those assumptions. And so there is like a research backing for the commitments that we are presenting. And when we think of the priorities for 2022, of course, we have also assigned priority or focused on those main aspects. So we have as priorities planning and measuring, through developing the necessary guidance. We have reporting as a priority. As I said, we will be establishing a reporting mechanism through the One Planet platform. And we have advocacy, which would be essential to continue building momentum and a movement to accelerate climate action in tourism. My colleague Jeremy Smith will be sharing more details about the different priorities, but before I give him the floor, I'd like to close with a summary of what we think is our value proposition towards you, signatories, and others interested. So we are committed to promote knowledge sharing and capacity building, accelerating the replication and scaling up of successful ongoing actions, and basically supporting organizations in planning and measuring of emissions, etc. We'd like to promote destination and value chain level cooperation, so fostering work at destination level to develop and implement climate action plans where the stakeholders at the destination can collaborate. We'd like to support tracking and disclosing of progress, once again, through the annual reporting mechanism to ensure accountability. And the fourth one is visibility and international recognition. Of course, trying to highlight organizations that are involved in successful actions and making efforts to advance via case studies, other communication products, including participation in international fora. That's all from my side today. I hand over to my colleague Jeremy for continuing the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Virginia. Thank you, Dirk, and thank you everyone else for being here today. It's wonderful to get the year started with such enthusiasm. My name is Jeremy Smith. I'm co-founder of Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency. And as Virginia mentioned at the beginning, I'm part of the coordination team for the implementation of the Glasgow Declaration this year and in the years to come. As Virginia also highlighted, with this being the first year, very much our priority is to support everybody in that initial planning stage and getting that moving. While we recognize that we have this huge diversity of signatures coming from all around the world in different sectors, we also recognize that people are at different stages, and there are some who are advanced, some who have already declared and signed with Tourism Declares, but an awful lot of people for whom the very notion of a climate action plan is something completely new, and we need to help people address this, those who are just starting out. And we really want to make a special effort to demystify the very notion of climate action planning so that it becomes something that helps you rather than something you see as a hurdle. As a start to that, I think I would look into the declaration and the 5 pathways that were drawn up in it: measurement, decarbonizing, regeneration, finance, and collaboration. We really want those to guide everyone's climate action plans as much as possible. And you can separate those into the first 3: measure, decarbonize, and regenerate, that really define what you're going to be doing, and the finance and the collaboration that are the enablers that make it possible and the way that people will operate. Where that may be slightly different is for certain supporting organizations and certain destination organizations for whom the role of providing or enabling finance and developing coordinations and collaborations among tourism stakeholders may well be their key multiplier role. Thank you. So looking a little bit more at climate action planning, as I said, our expectation is very much that for many of you, this will be your first plan. It will be a plan for a plan in the context of, the never-ending COVID pandemic. It's going to be a challenge for many of us to measure in a way that is truly meaningful for what goes forward. So we will be doing everything possible to help that, and I'll look at measurement in a couple of minutes. But a lot of these first plans will be about setting the enabling environment to deliver on climate action, putting together the foundations for success, ensuring the right resources, engaging whoever it should be, the right stakeholders, and then some quick wins, working out how you can move forward, motivate collaborators and stakeholders, address things, and get on the road towards decarbonizing. So we're going to be developing guidance, as soon as we possibly can, for signatories to really begin developing their plans. We'll be putting together sort of quick guides that people will be able to use as templates to get started and to start putting together their own plans. Now, that shouldn't be seen as one size fits all. If I've learned anything from 2 years with Tourism Declares, is that this is the most complex, nuanced, diverse industry around, and everyone's plan will be different and suited to their own situation. And it will need to be developed in participatory discussions inside your own organizations to truly transform what is a template and a guidance to align into something that makes most sense for yourselves. As we progress beyond year 1, either for those who are further down the line or for anyone who begins the process and begins measuring, then we can imagine that plans will progress, technical understanding will progress, ambition will progress. I mean, we have to. We're moving ever closer to 2030 and the global goal to halve global carbon emissions, and we want to be moving ourselves forward and seeing progress and getting there. And as we embark upon that challenge, we need to see, and we do truly believe that every single person here has something to contribute. And again, from the many conversations we've had in the last 2 years of Tourism Declares, we learn as much from those people who've never done anything as we do from those experts who've been doing it for however many years, because that's where we learn what each other's perspectives and insights are and the challenges we face and the solutions we can share as we move forward. And we'll be building on the processes that Tourism Declares started to provide these sort of opportunities for us to come together, learn from one another, be inspired by one another as we move forward and ahead together. For those of us who are further ahead, and we'll hear from some of them in a little while, we need the opportunity to share lessons learned and to help everyone on the path. Climate change, addressing climate change, is a truly collaborative issue. This isn't a competition. We all win, we all lose. We do this together. And for this purpose, we will be doing everything possible, and you'll hear these words a lot, in as participatory a way as possible. Yes, we're developing guidance, but we're developing it together. It's a participatory role. And we're going to be setting up some working groups and advisory boards to help with this. I'll get to that in a second. We'll be looking to highlight what leading organizations are doing to showcase their efforts, provide sort of beacons, lighthouses for the sector. And I'd highlight in particular that we're currently working through the Travel Foundation with Visit Scotland on the numerous climate action projects on the ground there. And I look forward to learning from those, being able to share as much as possible, learnings that move our sector forward as fast as possible. I just pause to say that although we are working across the sector, across everyone, and we have the vast range of different organizations signed up, we will be prioritizing support for SMEs and for destinations. This is where collaboration truly comes into play. This is where tourism happens, and these are the people most in need of our support, and they will be our priority. Furthermore, through experience of seeing what has been done and what is being done, the destination climate action journey is probably at the earliest stage, and that is where there is the most support to ensure the guidance, the practices, the approaches are there. In many places, no clear path exists. And I should say that all the guidance we provide, it won't just be plucked out of thin air, it will be participatory, and it will be aligned with the reporting mechanisms that Virginia mentioned, that in themselves will be developed collaboratively, but this will be a coordinated effort so that the guidance moves people towards achieving the reporting necessary to build and move our sector forward. More and more in the course of the year, these guidances, these actions, these resources will come forward, and they will be building into this repository of tools and resources. For now, there's one item in there, and that is the recommended actions report, which we put down at the end of last year, and it was built together by the same group that came together to create the Glasgow Declaration. This was led by UNEP and supported by the rest of us, Visit Scotland, Tourism Declares, Travel Foundation, and UNWTO. It looks across different suggested ways to develop climate action plans, focusing it inside of the 5 different pathways, and then filtering it by different types of organization and how they might see it support them. It's free to download. Strongly recommend using it as something to get some thoughts going. Now, the number one item on the pathways, of course, is measurement, and it's the recurring thing that people say to us is, how do I measure? And it's an absolute key element of the plan. It is being addressed by us as a priority, and there are resources out there, and through the various surveys that we've conducted, we're aware of more that people have said they've been using. And rather than just listing all the things there and that potentially providing greater confusion rather than clarity, we are conducting additional research, studying the range of resources and tools that exist to really assess and audit which are most useful, which will then be able to be collated into a briefing paper. Once we're able to provide that guidance, we will then be hosting online trainings on selected tools to truly help different sectors come together and see how we can measure and benchmark in a coordinated way. Just as we need to look to measure and to decarbonize our own operations, and it's wonderful that we have almost at 500 companies, organizations, destinations who are committed to doing that, we're also aware that this is only the very beginning in terms of shifting an entire sector, and we have to turn 500 into 5,000 into 50,000, and that comes through advocacy and outreach, getting those who have not come in yet to understand why they should, where the benefits for them lie, and why they want to be part of this participatory initiative. So we're going to look together to see what we can do for that, and we want to bring everyone together to help with that, supporting everyone, whoever that might be, supporter organizations, destinations, businesses, coming together to truly advocate for the implementation of the declaration and delivering on its potential as multipliers. It'd be great to get out from behind the Zoom window as fast as possible and into real world in-person meetings. We were looking forward to seeing people in Berlin, ITB. That has, gone virtual. It's been confirmed now. So, fingers crossed there'll be opportunities in the interim, but at the very least, we know that we will be coming together at COP27 next November. Of course, it would be fantastic to think that there will be chances before then to truly spread the word and expand this initiative as fast as possible. So I just want to really sort of come to them by looking at how we bring this together, and we talk about participation. So yes, we have everyone here. Yes, there are more people here. We have a second session this afternoon, and we'll be bringing in more signatories. We're going to be setting up some groups. There's going to be an advisory committee, which will have representatives, all signatory types, and then I'd like to think there'll be some high-level representatives from governments and business committed to steering, driving this initiative, putting it in the right place, getting the positioning right, and moving us forward as fast as possible. And then for more specific parts of the process, we are launching some working groups. We don't just want to randomly create groups for no purpose and have talking shops, and there may be more than this, but for now we have highlighted 3 places that we really think we need to bring some brains together and make things happen. And those 3 are in destinations. As I said, destinations are one of the earliest stage in the journey. So bringing together groups from some front runner destinations and others who've committed to really look at climate action planning there. A comms outreach group, very much to leverage the advocacy that I just talked about on the previous slide, and to move that forward and support how we build this initiative. And then, because we need to build the initiative for everyone, a capacity building group working to align the tools, the resources, the guidance, the climate action plan templates, really lift everyone up together. These working groups will overlap with one another. Each of them will feed into the collective development of the reporting framework. Everything's interconnected. It moves there faster together. And we will be setting up some terms of reference, and that'll come very soon. So, next steps. Very soon there will be invitations to join working groups, and we will hold the first meetings. That repository that currently has 1 resource in it will be properly operational, and we will share initial guidance for action planning, for input, and to help people get started. Later in the year, we'll enrich, and there'll be further resources for action planning. We'll have got to a point of being able to provide the briefing paper on measurement, looking at what is happening there and providing guidance for different sectors on how to measure. And then there will be training materials to support with all of that. And then by the end of the year, we will have reached COP27. We'll be in Egypt, looking forward to seeing where we've got to at that point. And of course, for everyone who made the first commitment at COP26, we will have reached a point where those first climate action plans will have been submitted, and we will be in the place of building on what we have now rather than just building forward. So for all of you, for now, if you're not already, I strongly recommend you sign up for the newsletter, receive updates. We want to hear from you. Give us feedback on our plans. Let us know what's happening. Of course, you're going to have a chance to do that very shortly during the Q&A. For now, though, I'll hand you back to Virginia. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for all the details shared about our plans. Indeed, we're looking forward to receiving your feedback and questions. Actually, as the Q&A session will take place through the chat, since we're numerous, I'd like to invite you to already start typing in your questions if you have them clear, or suggestions or feedbacks in there. Now we are moving into the third part of the agenda, where we are going to hear from some signatories and their insights. But first, I'd like to thank you all for responding to the preparatory survey that we circulated in preparation for this meeting. We collected 81 responses, and perhaps unsurprisingly, the three main areas that those feedback points were touching upon were planning, reporting, and measurement. Some of these questions will be answered now together with the signatories, and we will come back to more during the questions and answers session. I'd like to introduce now the colleagues, signatories that have joined us today. We have invited to share with us some insights Janie Neumann. She's Sustainable Tourism Manager at Visit Scotland. Susanne Etty, she's the Environmental Impact Specialist at Intrepid Group. And Claire Whiteley, Head of Environment at the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. Each one of them represents a different type of signatory, business, destination, and supporting organization. So let's hear from them on a few aspects. I'd like to start with a question for Janie, but let me first please check that you're there. Oh yeah, great. Hi, Janie. Good to see you. So basically, Visit Scotland is a DMO that has already initiated the development of climate action plan. Could you share with us some of the lessons learned while taking those initial steps, and maybe some recommendations for the group to get started?
Yes, thanks, Virginia, and good morning, everybody. Definitely, I would say we have started with this a while ago with Joining Tourism Declares as one of the first NTOs, but this is very much still a journey. That was the starting point, and a fair amount of work has been going on, but it's really a process and an ongoing development of our climate action plan and refining details. So we found it really helpful that looking at what the outputs and outcomes are, focusing on the 5 pathways, really reflecting a lot of what Jeremy said earlier, to kind of say, okay, well, that's what we're looking at. What does that mean in Scotland's context? Also, I think for a DMO, it's difficult, and as was alluded to, probably one of the more challenging areas to put in a climate action plan, because we have very little immediate influence. So obviously there's very much actions we're looking to input in the offices and the properties that we operate and run. But it's important for every DMO to kind of look at what are the areas of influence, like where can we make a difference? And for ourselves, you know, we've decided, yes, we need to work with industry, obviously, but also with our destinations and destination communities, and involve the visitor. So as a marketing organization, what kind of messages can we send to the visitor to get them involved? So those are our kind of key areas of influence, and there will be different ways of engaging them and taking climate action. Another point, and not to stress that, can't be stressed enough, is that collaboration piece. To really find out who are in industry, who are some of the leaders in the field that are doing quite a lot, you know, we can work with, use that as innovative case studies and examples, and learn from industry as well as from destinations. And also we are lucky that we have a government that has set very ambitious climate reduction targets and is also supporting kind of that journey to net zero for the tourism industry with some finance. But there are also other partners in the area that we can leverage. You know, let's not reinvent the wheel. What advice and support is out there already that we can use and partners we can work with? You know, that might be pan sector, not just specific to tourism, but tourism businesses can benefit from that. So it's really getting a lay of the land and what's out there, making those connections and working together to kind of achieve, to use our resources effectively and to really make use of the expertise and resources that are out there. And other than that, I would say get help. So especially on the measuring piece, it's not something that's, you know, we're still finding our way and how a destination does that best. There's maybe different models out there from whether you're a city destination, a smaller region, or a relatively large or national region. So we're working with the University of Queensland using their model to kind of establish our baseline for carbon emissions. So that's been really interesting and useful, as well as Jeremy alluded to, I'm working closely with the Travel Foundation and Tourism Declares on a number of projects, working with industry, looking at scope 3 emissions, as well as with destinations, so smaller destinations within Scotland, to really introduce climate action planning and support them, because as much as Scotland needs to have a climate action plan, a lot of this activity happens even a level further down, so in individual smaller destinations. So again, it's making those connections, building capacity within destinations and industry. I would say, you know, sounds easy, just saying it like that. There's definitely been some challenges, and sometimes progress might seem really slow, but every action taken is an opportunity to learn. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't work that well. But it's really about an opportunity to learn and progress. So every kind of action implemented can be useful. And we have had some challenges, especially working on this during a COVID pandemic and making this a priority for our organization, for businesses all around. I think there's a real understanding, and our industry survey shows that, you know, industry appreciates this is something that needs to be done. We don't have to have that discussion anymore, but on a day-to-day basis, do they have the resource and the capability and capacity to focus on that at the moment? And overall, like that benefit of sharing ideas, I would also kind of confirm that you know what we learn, and it's been really useful being part of Tourism Declares and then kind of sharing with other destination communities. So we can only learn from each other and from the detours on this journey and what has worked, as well as the successes. So looking forward to doing more of that.
Thank you so much, Janie. Great insights. I'm sure that the rest of destinations connected feel a bit more motivated even than at the beginning of the call, while hearing how you're advancing at strong pace and with confidence. Also learning by doing, right? Which at the end of the day is what all of us jointly are aiming to do through the implementation of the Glasgow Declaration, as there's no one single recipe for success. So we'll have to start testing and get to work as fast as possible. All right, so next invited speaker is Susanne from Intrepid Travel. Hi, Susanne, morning, well, afternoon for you. So as a tour operator, Intrepid is well advanced in the journey of measurement. We all know that. So could you share some insights with the group on the complexities of measuring, for example, scope 3, which is a recurrent question that we are getting, and a few tips for those that are at the beginning of the journey that they can start approaching it with confidence?
Yeah, no, very happy to. Thank you. So yeah, indeed, scope 3 is definitely a very big topic. And I know that this is an area many travel companies really often struggle with or don't know really where to start. So I fully understand you're all there. I think the first part of any carbon management strategy that you have to put in place for measuring for your business or organization is really about that accounting for your greenhouse gas emissions that you generate through running your offices, but also in our case as tour operators running our trips. But as I said at the start, measuring is not an easy task, but once you overcome it, it has a real opportunity by identifying and quantifying those emissions to identify, for example, excessive energy uses, for example, in your offices or other inefficiencies. One really good resource to get us started is really the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, because that established a really comprehensive and is a comprehensive global standard with a framework to inform around measurement and how to manage greenhouse gas emissions. And that's really from operations, like in the Intrepid case, from the offices, but also then across the value chain where the Scope 3 emissions come in. So that's a really good starting point. But before I go in, I just wanted to really clarify also what are actually the Scope 3 emissions. So Scope 3 really primarily comes from a company's supply chain and are not under the direct control of the company like Intrepid. So examples to give you an idea what Scope 3 emissions account for is like your business travel, your employee commuting, or emissions arising from leasing of assets if you're very asset light. For example, cruise ships, but it could also be the flights within your trips or any transport within your trips, your business travel, or the commuting of transport of goods, which could be for accommodation, the outsourcing of laundry. Scope 3 mapping and emissions reporting is, as I said, a real opportunity to understand your environmental impact around your supply chain. So how do I start? I think the first step that you can take right now is actually mapping your own value chain. So that's around identifying where there are actually Scope 3 activities in your inventory. So, and that can be really an internal exercise you can do today to identify those activities and make a really complete list of all these activities in your company's value chain across those different categories, from listing your purchased goods and services, how much is commuting, what business travel are you doing, list your suppliers and other relevant value partners. And most of all, really look also at the spend so that you can focus on those high spend tier 1 suppliers. Around the estimating of the emissions, I think as a start, it doesn't have to be exact science. So starting out, you will need to make sometimes educated guesses, but by learning, for example, from industry averages, for instance, or combining your own data to reach out figures. What is really important, remember that sometimes it's good to have a reasonable estimate and not to focus on to make it really perfect and total accuracy. That's something that you can also do year on year around improvements. The important part is for you to take your first step. And then it's really around prioritizing your efforts. So map your emissions footprint by scale. How much do you control, and make those emission hotspots really kind of those that you can easily reach your first call to act on. And that's, I think, it's really important in the aspect working with your suppliers. So do reach out to them, partner with them to decarbonize. And the crucial word is here, collaboration is the key here. So thank you, that would be my initial tips, but it's a big topic.
Thank you so much, Susanna. You always make it feel somehow easy and approachable. So thanks for all the tips and translating the complexity for us into actionable points. For sure, we will be discussing Scope 3 more in detail when we are doing the work on measurement and the working group. What we wanted to give you all participants today is somehow a bit of a taste of what the discussions within the groups may look like, what is some examples of the knowledge that we have in the network, and how we really think that together we will be able to advance faster and in a more consistent manner. So thanks, Susanne. Third invitee for this brief panel with signatories is Claire from Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. Claire, good morning. Thanks for joining. You, as Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, have signed Glasgow Declaration as a supporting organization And you are, of course, actively supporting your members with environmental sustainability frameworks. So which are the areas where you see most synergies and collaboration happening between your members and partners and the Glasgow Declaration community?
Yeah, I think one thing is that we are an organisation which is all about collaboration, and has been mentioned several times this morning, the very, very important point that collaboration will be key in achieving what we need to achieve over the next 10 years. One thing that we're doing with our members is to really gain insights from them. So a lot of our members are already on this journey. They've been working on it for many, many years. They've already got sort of plans in place. They're starting to make achievements. So we're working with them to understand what they've done, how they've done it, challenges that they faced, and kind of how they've managed to overcome them, so that we can then use that to help inform other people, the rest of the industry, as to how they can approach things. So we've been working with our members and with external experts as well, industry experts and sustainability experts, to create what we're calling the pathway to net positive hospitality. And this is something which takes a holistic view of sustainability, cutting across climate action, water stewardship, waste management and circular economy, and also biodiversity, but with a very sort of key focus on climate action and the importance of that, given the timescales that we have to work in. The pathway that we're laying out is trying to break this journey down. So when you first look at what we need to achieve, it can look quite daunting. So we've broken it down into 4 separate stages that really take people through, from those who are just getting started and haven't done anything, to help them to understand what they need to do, through things like setting IPCC aligned guidance, 1 and scope 2, and then through to well. So really kind of trying to take people on that journey and explain in simple terms, and using the insights that we've gained from our members, how they can achieve that. We are also looking at all the resources that are out there. Again, there's so much good stuff out there, but it can be very daunting when you're first getting going to know, okay, so where do I start? So we're trying to sort of pull that out, and help people to understand where they can go to find the resources that they need to really get started. So that's what we're doing, and we'll be releasing the initial stages of that at ITB, and then continuing to work with the industry, continuing to work with the likes of Hope Tourism Declares and New Virginia, to really kind of look at how we can further support the industry and keep everything aligned as well, so that we're not all coming out with different resources that are kind of saying different things, and just confusing the situation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Claire. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I guess one of the reasons that has been stopping climate action in our sector is the fragmented approaches. So if we can really converge and be pragmatic and strategize jointly, I think that would be useful for everyone. I mean, definitely your members, we know they are leading brands in the accommodation industry, and normally I would say they are maybe more advanced than SMEs in the journey on climate action. So it would be nice that, let's say, we manage to pick out the elements from their learnings that, for example, SMEs can be enabled to take action. In addition to the destinations, of course, we want to focus on helping SMEs that at the end of the day are 90% of our sector globally. So that would be great. And yeah, I mean, at the same time, we also hope, as we presented in the value proposition, that the visibility opportunities, the support and the training are also maybe appealing for those more advanced colleagues and organizations. So thanks, and looking forward. This has been a brief panel, and I think it's good as an icebreaker for those in the audience to to start sharing their questions in the question and answers, in the chat, sorry. We will be doing this discussion with support from Roxana and Ben. Roxana is a project specialist at UNWTO, working with us in the Sustainable Development of Tourism Department. And Ben Lynam is head of communications at the Travel Foundation. So thanks to both of you for your support today. Do we already have interesting input in the chat from those connected?
Yeah, let's start with the first question that we received, that they are asking. We have science-based targets with IHG. If these are less ambitious than those suggested here, what are science-based targets suffice? We have the same question, another question about this. So I think it's better we take the answer and then we continue, right? Or shall we keep reading the questions and then you answer at once?
No, I think it's, you go ahead, Jeremy, please.
I would say we should do them one by one, but I mean, I'm happy to quickly say that our aims would be to align with anything as advanced and as well thought out as the science-based targets. And we have certainly already engaged with Science-Based Targets Initiative, Carbon Disclosure Project, Race to Zero. This is not about creating confusion. This is about bringing things together. And science-based targets themselves, just before COP, released net zero guidance for the science-based targets that lays out how these come together. And we're all on the same path. And we would certainly be, someone who had a science-based targets is far down the line. We wouldn't be saying to them, it's more ambitious to do this. We would be working with them to align.
Thanks, Jeremy. Indeed, I mean, the idea is to reduce the burden on those that are already taking action and be strategic and to advance fast.
Yeah, I'll do it. The next question. So Marcus Cotton, Tiger Mountain, was just asking if we had any recommendations or any suggestions for climate action plan templates.
Thank you so much for the question. We will have, as presented by Jeremy earlier today, it's part of the, let's say, priorities of this year. So we are getting started with those quick guides that will allow signatories to develop their plans.
I'll follow up with the next one. Bob Garner from Casalde Fishi, probably terribly pronounced. He was just making the point about collaboration and saying that there will always be tension across the stakeholders that you engage with. And if we had any reflections on how best to manage that tension to bring everyone along with you on the path that you're trying to go along.
To see tension as creative, and we need to move forward and listen to everyone, and we will gain from everyone's insights. And the experience of Tourism Declares is that, as I think I mentioned, I've learned from all manner of different people. We've all learned, and giving someone the space to share their opinions will help us move forward.
So there is a question from Benjamin Carey saying that to be more inclusive and encouraging small tourism enterprises, what arrangements are there to make resources available and accessible in other languages?
Thanks, a very, very pertinent question. Normally we try to translate key resources into French and Spanish, but there are limitations as to what we can commit to. So we will try to at least the major guidance to have it translated. But I'm not sure we would be able to translate all manuals and everything that would fit in the repository. Most likely not, just to manage the expectations. So the repository is operational, as we said. It has really a few resources now. I just want to take this opportunity to remind you to share with us resources that you would like us to check and review and curate in the repository, so that it can really be useful tool. Maybe then jointly we can also decide which is necessary to be translated once we have tested the resources and prioritized jointly. Thank you.
Okay, one here, Chloe King was just asking if the guidance will also include adaptation solutions, or will it mostly be focused on the greenhouse gas mitigation side of things?
I'd say that with the third pathway being regeneration, and very much looking at the relationship that we have, hopefully positively, with natural systems and with communities, that is there both to prioritize looking for a positive impact where possible, but also acknowledging that tourism very often happens in fragile ecosystems, and that the reality is that we will need to support adaptation, especially to destination level, and that guidance will and has to happen.
Yeah, I also have a hope that we will manage to let's say, make sure that all the efforts of our industry to protect the ecosystems where we operate, which are not to be neglected, can be also incorporated as positive aspects of our industry with regards to climate action. For instance, there are many ecosystems that have high sequestration potential for emissions, which are being taken care of by tourism businesses, and maybe for the moment that's not incorporated as relevant actions of a climate plan, but I think it should. So we will be looking at these aspects to really also capture the value of what the industry is already doing from the angle of climate action. Another reminder is that the recommended actions document that was led by our colleagues in UNEP, which Jeremy referred to before, is structured around the 5 pathways. So you already have some actions there that are connected to the regeneration pathway that maybe you want to take a look at. Thank you.
We have received some questions about the scope 3. So do you mind explaining a little bit, like people are asking what it includes, how they can measure? So maybe would be helpful.
A particular kind of question is there a standard, if you know what I mean? Can we say for sure this is scope 3 and this is by looking at a reference?
There isn't, correct me if I'm wrong, particularly Suzanne from Intrepid, who has worked on this and has, a science-based target accredited for Intrepid, but there isn't a simple, these are the science-based targets for tourism, especially because tourism is so many disparate sort of sectors inside of tourism itself. We need to establish as best as we can where those are, but we're not going to say, this is the list, we've decided it, press send, here it is. We need to come together and establish a coordinated, agreed set of guidelines, set of scope 3 emissions, basing it from what comes out of the greenhouse gas protocol. Where it's things like offices, which obviously cross outside of our industry, then yes, there are some fairly standard guidelines, but when it becomes what's a tour operator's scope 3 versus what's a travel agent's versus what's a hotelier's, what's a destination management organization, etc., it becomes more complicated. And the only way we get to that is together, because almost everyone's scope 3s overlap with each other.
Suzanne, did you have anything to add to that before I move on?
Well said. Good starting point, definitely greenhouse gas protocol. There's a whole standard on scope 3. But as Jeremy said, I can just reinforce, we are very heterogeneous. So what I can share, what has been our top ones within scope 3 doesn't mean will be exactly the same for you. So, and that's really where the mapping starts. But it comes all back to collaboration. So the more we work together, the more we can learn from each other and accelerate our learning.
I just add into that as well, from a hotel perspective, there was a net zero methodology that was released towards the end of last year by Greenview and a couple of other organisations. And within that, they've tried to lay out for a hotel what would be important to include within your scope 3, what things are within scope 3, but might be very difficult to measure. So you need to focus on getting that data first, and then things which would be less important. So there's a little bit potentially more guidance out there for hotels than for other parts of the industry.
And specifically, because we had a specific example on it, just see if I can push it. So for instance, with tour operators, should they include international flights, even if they have even been bought separately by their customer?
Shall I comment on this one? Generally, then it's a direct example. In the case of Intrepid Travel, currently we're not accounting for those, and that's based on a technical assessment that's been done by the Climate Active Carbon Neutrality Standard that we are following, which is under the Australian government, because it is not making a part of our product. So if you're looking at the what makes our product, however, there's a huge advocacy role that we have to play, because obviously we make people fly. And one aspect of that has been really the development of domestic products to provide alternatives to long haul flights, but it's also around, again, the word collaboration. How can we work more together for advocacy and change, especially in the aviation industry?
Shall I follow up with another one, Roxana? I've got Ben Kerry was just asking about the longevity of the Glasgow Declaration. Just kind of asking, how sustainable is this initiative in the long term? Will it be funded for the long term? Will it remain a free program for those people who have signed on? Any sort of comments on just on that?
Yes, sure. Thanks for asking also more process-related questions. We are committed to 2030, and the initiative is free for signatories, and we don't plan to change it. Do we have more questions, colleagues? Because I see that it's 58, so maybe let's pick one or two more.
We do. Shall I? There's a message from Senex Malta, which is just asking about resources that people have. And so if there is a body of resources out there, how best can those resources be offered to other signatories through this platform and through the network?
Thanks for the question. We have enabled a repository inside the One Planet network website. The One Planet is providing the umbrella for us to implement Glasgow Declaration. We already have a few resources listed there on the page. For example, the methodology on net zero that Claire was just referring to, we just uploaded it. These are still documents, let's say, are documents that we have curated, but some colleagues may find them maybe too, let's say, technical or too complex. Our intention is to create the documents that are out there, which we find relevant, and then base our guidance on the learnings we will extract from the existing documents so as to facilitate your work. But the repository is already operational. If you have resources identified, I know that Sanex has been working on the topic for some time now. We would be happy to also feature those and see how we best promote them. Thank you.
Maybe one, I think we've got one more, haven't we? There's comments here around recognizing the importance of biodiversity in ecosystem protection and sort of suggest seeking reassurance that that will be something that will be featured within the Glasgow Declaration's actions.
Yeah, I think I would reiterate the fact that regeneration is put as one of the 5 pathways, very much to highlight that when we look for tourism to not only get its house in order and decarbonize, but actually to play a truly positive role in building out of the recovery of COVID into addressing the climate emergency, undoubtedly one of our greatest potentials is in the protection, restoration, regeneration of natural habitats on land and at sea. and the biodiversity that brings those ecosystems together.
Perfect.
There are obviously more questions here. I think it might just be worth saying, first of all, there's a frequently asked questions page on our website, and also we'll capture all of these chat comments, and we'll look to see if we can address some of these questions in our next newsletter too.
That sounds like a plan, Ben. Thank you so much. We have completed the hour together today, so I really like to thank you for your interest, staying connected for a full hour, all the questions and your commitment. We couldn't be happier to have you all on board. Thanks also to our invited speakers, to colleagues, and to everyone, and looking forward to seeing you soon in our next webinar. Thank you all. Have a nice day.